This is Denari Pledge Segmenter Part 1. Pledge Segmenter works just like Gift Segmenter and Name Segmenter in that it follows the rule. It uses pledge characteristics as its filters and it outputs pledge characteristics. So if you want to get pledge information, Pledge Segmenter is the place to go. If you want name information, then you're going to go to Name Segmenter, not Pledge Segmenter, for example. Or if you want gift information, you're going to go to Gift Segmenter and not Pledge Segmenter for gift information. So with that in mind, let's start a new segment. We're going to go to the Pledges tab, and in the lower right hand corner we find Pledge Segmenter. And here we see a list of all the segments that somebody here in the training company has already created. So that simply means that just like we've seen before with the other segmenters, we can create a segment and save it and then come back and run it again at some point in the future if we want to. We're going to go ahead and create a new one though. We're going to click Add New. And the first thing we do is give this a description, and I'm just going to make something up here. And then a segment code. Now remember, the description is for you. It tells you what this segment is about, so that when you come back and you see it on that list we just looked at, you'll know what the segment is about. You'll be able to pull it up and run it. There are really two major output options here. One is count. Count is just simply going to give you a number of pledges. And remember that we're counting pledges here, not donors. So if John Doe gave 5 pledges and they show up in the output based on our filters, then you're going to see John Doe's listed there 5 times in the output if you're using Excel. But in a count, it's going to count for 5 pledges. So just remember we're outputting pledges here. And then the other spreadsheet type formulas here or outputs here, Excel is the one that you're going to use most often. So we'll go ahead and select that. All the filters are located in these two sections. We're going to start by expanding the pledge section. Most of the filters here on this page are pretty self-explanatory. The two at the top, you see sponsored name segment and sponsorship code, are only show up if you have the sponsorship module turned on. So if you aren't using sponsorship, your first field here are going to be payment amount. Now, all of the filters that we see here have an AND operator between them, just like Gift Segmenter and most of Name Segmenter. So anything we choose, for example, if we choose payment amount, we could say equal to 50. So in other words, we're looking for pledges that have a payment amount of $50. And we might want to be looking for monthly pledges, so we can choose equal to, and then we'll come down here and choose monthly. And so now we have a segment that's going to give us any pledge that has a payment amount equal to $50 and a frequency equal to monthly. In other words, both of those things have to be true. And so the more things we add here, the more filters we use, the fewer pledges are going to result in the output, most likely or most often, because more things have to be true. Notice, I went through this quickly, but notice the filter options here, pretty much the same as Gift Segmenter. They all work the same way. Anytime we use a filter like equal to or an operator like equal to, that only requires something in the low value field. We don't need anything in the high value field. If we were using between, for example, then we'd have to create a range by putting something in the low value and the high value field. We can filter here on start date and stop date of the pledge. The creation date is the date that the pledge was entered into Denari. It's really the date that you hit save on that pledge record, or if it was created through online community, the donor created that pledge record. This is a helpful field because it allows you to get a list of pledges that were created, say for example last week or last month or something like that. Especially with online community, you know, it's easy. Donors are creating pledges all the time in your data, and you can kind of lose track of that. Now, Denari does send the webmaster an email and notifies that person when a pledge has been created, but you can kind of lose track of that. So you can always create a pledge segment and say, give me a list of all the pledges that were created last week, and that gives you a chance to review those pledges and just kind of see what's happening in your data. We filter here on the appeal code, the fund code. Those are the appeal and the fund of the pledge, remember, not the gift. We can filter on the campaign, which groups a bunch of appeal codes together, so that just allows us to, rather than filter on a list of pledges, we can filter simply on the campaign that kind of groups those all together if those appeals are linked to the campaigns. And then we come down here to most of these fields from here on down are related to electronic giving, electronic fund transfer or credit card. The first one here is the day of the month. That's the day that it's set to run each month. So we could say, for example, give me a list of all the pledges that are set to run between the 1st and the 15th of each month, or something like that. The transaction date is the actual date that it's set to run. So here we would say, give me a list of all the pledges that are set to run between May 1st and May 15th of some year. And so that allows us to be a little more specific. The status fields are both the EFT and credit card work the same way. Let's say, for example, we want to get a list of all the electronic fund transfer pledges that are set to live. We can choose equal to as our operator. And over here in the low value field, Denari is actually looking for a letter, and the little key here tells us what that letter is. So if we want live pledges, we're going to put the letter L there in the low value field. Credit card, again, works exactly the same way. The one field down here at the bottom that is not electronically related is this closed field. Note that by default, when you create a new pledge segment, this field is blank. That means that you're getting both open and closed pledges. So if you want only closed pledges or only open pledges, you need to come here and make a selection in that field. The EFT field here allows us to get any pledge that is making its payment by EFT or not by EFT. So we can either include or exclude that group of pledges. Credit card works exactly the same way. We can get all those pledges that are credit card pledges or not credit card pledges. And then the electronic payment field here combines the two. So here we're going to get those that have making payments by EFT or credit card, or the reverse of that, not EFT or by credit card. This field is really helpful. Some folks like to send pledge statements only to those people who are making pledges not by credit card or EFT. And so they can use this, create this pledge segment and then use that as a filter for pledge statements, which we're going to look at in a few minutes, how we'll do that. But this field can be helpful for pledge statements and for other reasons, just to get a list of pledges that are not being made electronically. Now let's slide back up to the sponsorship fields here. The sponsored name segment is the first filter that we have, and if you're using sponsorship, you'll see this field there. And what this does is it allows us to create a sponsored name segment and then link it to the pledge segment to get a list of pledges. Now remember, in Denari, a sponsorship is a pledge, and so that simply means that a lot of the information that you're going to get related to the sponsorships, not the children themselves, but the sponsorships, are going to come through pledge segmenter. You're going to use pledge segmenter a lot. So this field would say, for example, we want to get a list of all the pledges. We want to see how people are doing on their pledges for all those children who are sponsored. We can create the sponsored name segment that identifies all the children that are sponsored, and then link that to the pledge segment. So when we output the pledge segment, the sponsored name segment becomes the filter for the pledge segment. So the pledge information that we're going to see in our output in our Excel spreadsheet are going to be related only to those children that are sponsored. And by the way, the Excel output does include sponsorship type fields, and so you'll see a lot of the child's name, for example, and a lot of other information related to sponsorship, the correspondence, contact information, and some other things there in sponsorship. So this is a really powerful tool to be able to look at and analyze your sponsorship activity. The sponsorship code field relates back to the child, and so it allows us to filter on just one child if we wanted to. So we could say equal to and put in the child's code, or a range of codes using between, or however we want to do that to get information just related to a single or a group of children here. So that is the filter section. We're going to close that up and move on down to the statistics section, and we'll take that up in part 2.